Hi, my name is Zizaran, and I am going to read the manifesto. Every expansion provides an opportunity for us to reassess the current meta, improve game mechanics that are currently weak, and reduce the power of those that are fun in any way. We've also lowered the output of some of the most excessively powerful builds from Delirium, like those that utilized Purposeful Harbinger notable passive and the Archmage Stormman builds. Right. Goodbye, Harold. Two-handed melee weapons focus on having a great risk for a great reward, but over time, their power has dropped. All high-level two-handed melee weapons have been rebalanced, pushing for greater disparity between weapon types. The goal is that every high-level two-handed weapon has a role and is an ideal base type for someone. For most two-handed weapon types, each weapon has its own implicit mod, focusing on specific mechanics associated with its weapon type. Do you think they're talking specifically about, like, Coronal Mace versus Vaal Axe, or like Vaal Axe versus Abyssal Axe versus Flesh Ripper? Be really cool if there's like 3 or 4 per actual thing, not just, like Vaal Axe versus Coronal. But we'll see, I guess. Axe versus Mace, probably. Well, we'll see. That sounds interesting, though. Elite passives give much more total recovery per second for life leech than before, so reaching maximum leech is easier for slow attacks and two-handed attacks with some accessible investment. But one-handers don't need to invest into them, pretty much. But anyway, some slow attacks with added damage have added removed, and their damage multiplier improved, as flat added damage inherently favors builds with high attack speed. Ground Slam, Earthquake, Ice Crash, Vaal Ground Slam, and Vaal Earthquake have had their added physical damage or added cold damage removed in exchange for improving their damage multiplier. I really think Vaal Earthquake could be super cool. Many of the new war cries and the new Fist of War support for slam skills greatly benefit slower attacks, synergizing well with two-handed weapons. And there are now many powerful options to invest in slow attacks rather than the handful of mechanics that existed previously. I'm really excited for Fist of War. Herald of Purity has been changed from adding physical damage to granting more physical damage, giving 12% more physical damage at gem level 20. This was to provide an equal benefit to weapon attack builds regardless of their speed. Facebreaker on Suicide Watch. Holy shit. Dude, Facebreaker is literally over, dude. I thought like everyone that plays Facebreaker did like Herald of Purity with Purity Rings, right? I haven't played it in so long, but like, it's still fine for like leveling in early game, but like end game is, oh man. The physical damage multiplier when dual wielding has been removed. This was originally added as a fix from half a decade ago. This allows two-handed weapons to remain the kings of damage, while dual wielding is the king of speed with some defensive benefits. Brands. The design of brands make them very powerful for clearing out areas with very passive playstyle, as well as dealing damage to bosses with very little time spent standing still. This often makes brand characters weren't engaging with many challenging mechanics, instead of running around waiting for enemies to die. That's my favorite part of it. Brands now drop at their original or recalled location when the enemy they are attached to is slain. This prevents them from chaining repeatedly out of the player's control, killing monsters that haven't had a chance to meet the player yet. Yay! We hated that. We hated that about brands, dude. We hated it. We want to move in the direction of players having to recast their brands more often, with the option to invest in brand duration to reduce how often one must recast brands. I don't appreciate this post. We've lowered the detached duration of brands to bring them in line with mines, which also had their detached duration lowered when last reviewed. This is simply because the duration was unreasonably long, especially for the new and plentiful brand duration passives. Because of all these changes, we've been able to slightly improve the power of Storm Brand and greatly improve Armageddon Brand. Dude, it just would have been so funny if they nerfed Armageddon Brand again for no reason. Improve the utility and power granted by brand passives, and add a new brand cluster, and of course introduce new brands, including the Arcanist brand that lets you trigger many different spells using brands. My god. My boy. They killed my boy. Oh, this is hilarious. This just sounds like, I mean, okay, at least they're still not as bad as totems. They're still not as bad as totems, but this is like, I don't know, dude. This is definitely something that still might be viable, but I think a lot less people are going to take a big chance on League starting with this stuff. This is more something like, okay, you know what? As the second or third character, I'll look at like, maybe it's not as bad as it sounds. The fact that they don't chain, the fact that they drop back to their original and recoiled position just sounds kind of grim, especially the fact on top of that we have brand recoil. Yeah, it was way too OP, but this is like making the playstyle not fun. Stun. Changes to the power of slow attacks have resulted in it being much easier to stun bosses, simply because of how much damage you can do with a single hit relative to their health. Rather than increasing the stun threshold, bosses now become immune to stuns for a short duration after being stunned. Oh no. Like, it did look earlier, they had us in the first half, it looked like they were going to make stun viable, and that it was like, oh, okay, but, okay. They had us in the first half. Most major bosses and map bosses have a stun immunity duration of 2 seconds. I can stun it for 0.2 seconds every 2 seconds. Poggers! Like, even if you can perma-stun bosses, it's not like a playstyle that people are like super investing in, because it's just... What? Anyway, that was odd. X for doubt? Yeah, that one. Let's see Quinn. I really want to see Quinn's reaction to this, dude. Weeping. Literally weeping. We've added new keystones to the Marauder duelist sections of the tree. This allowed investment in slow impale attacks, mitigating big hits with armor, and making Warcries more accessible to non-Warcry invested builds. Impaler. When your hits impale enemies, also impale other enemies near them. Inflict 4 additional impales on enemies you impale, and enemies cannot be impaled for 4 seconds after you impale them. That actually seems really well thought out. That's really well thought out for slow, like, earthquake skills. 100% chance to defend with double armor. Maximum damage reduction for any type is 50%. Wait, pardon? Maximum damage reduction for any damage type is 50%? For any damage type? It will only affect things like fortify and stuff. Still, meh. Support for mechanics that have been added in the past few years that as of yet do not have an adequate support on the passive tree. Some of these mechanics include Rage, Unleash, Corpse Manipulation, Warcries, Heralds, and Banners. I love, like, I think Unleash, I'm so happy that they wrote that, because I think Unleash is just so cool. I think Unleash is, like, one of the cooler things they've added to the game. It's just so cool, especially with things like Ball Lightning and Freeze Pulse. Even if they're not necessarily the strongest, it's just so cool. It's like, brah. It's just nice. It's just, like, a really cool support gem. Cluster Duels. I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm excited. How we feeling, chat? Cluster Duels will remain in the game, available from Delirium encounters. Delirium encounters will be less common, but will drop significantly more Cluster Duels than before, as we still want Cluster Duels to be accessible and a major part of character development. On a particular note, Purposeful Harbinger now gives aura buffs from skills have 8% effect for each herald affecting you, up to 40%. Oh! Oh, hard capped. Oh. Hard capped at 40%. That's still quite a lot, actually. That's still possibly stronger than every other build. Let's see what they do with the rest. Voices and Megalomaniac are unchanged, while Split Personality is limited to 2? What do you mean? What? Why? Why is Voices not limited? Are you crazy? Voices was insane for every build last patch. Literally. Like, even if you just use like the Warcry cluster or anything, it was just insane. Val Molten Shell. Really? Are they actually gonna nerf Val Molten Shell? I like said yesterday I would be very surprised if they would do that. Val Molten Shell was providing too much damage mitigation for too long with too little investment. This resulted in Val Molten Shell being used on a huge proportion of characters, including those that didn't get much armor beyond a Granite Flask. We intend to keep it as the best defensive Val skill for armor-invested characters, while bringing it closer in power with Val Grace, and instead of flat armor value, it multiplies your existing armor rather than giving an effect less relevant to armor-invested characters. It also removes and is removed by other guard skills. Previously, it only had this effect with Molten Shell. Not potentially that bad. Could be fine. We'll see. While Molten Shell was a little bit OP, the reason why I liked it so much is that I feel like defense is very easily overlooked in Path of Exile. But this could be fine. That could be fine. Cyclone. We have removed the stun immunity from Cyclone, but made no other changes to it? I think that's like honestly not gonna matter that much, but I think it's just gonna feel bad for not a big like yeah, you can still get stun immune in other ways. So what I think this is gonna feel like for most people playing like a 6 or 7k life Slayer or whatever, I think it's gonna feel like, you know, when like your shield charge gets stuck on something? I think it's gonna feel like that. Like, you know, when you just randomly get stunned, I think that's what it's gonna feel like. Archmage. Archmage support provided too much fun for builds when built around it very heavily. We made changes to bring it more in line with other builds, while still noting that it's going to be a huge source of power for mana invested builds. Fevered Mind has been reworked, and is now limited to 1. Voidbringer and Apex now add a flat mana cost rather than a percentage modifier. I'm sweating. Poor Stormbrand, dude. These items provided 2 graded damage multiplier from a single unique, as their once downside had become an upside. Okay, so real talk, I honestly feel like this could still be Archmage is completely fine. I feel like something, and I exaggerate too, but I feel like something that is very common in Path of Exile and what we all do is that if something is nerfed even a little bit, it's dead and we won't touch it. So it might be okay. For example, they might have made Fevered Mind really good or really strong now that it's only limited to 1. It might be 200% increased mana cost. We don't know. And it could still be completely fine, but that means that it could be quite a lot riskier to league start with it, especially if you want to race, right? So now with the current changes, I would 100% not risk league starting Stormbrand Hierophant, right? And it might still be one of the strongest builds. We don't know that, right? We don't know what else is being added, what is being changed to cluster jewels. There was something with Hierophant being changed as well. So, you know, it's still... It could be fine. A few unique weapons that provided too much power, especially after the change to their base type, have had some values lowered. Starforge, Disintegrator, and Hegemony's Era will now have lower damage per second than on live, while other items remain the same or improved. Interesting to see that Disfavor has not been nerfed. I think that's particularly because the Uberzir is such a fucking hard fight, and they want to make that like valuable to farming because it's so strong. Like as a fight, right? It's very dangerous on hardcore. Very surprised. Not surprised at Starforge. That makes sense. Although it is from like an endgame fight. These are more confusing to me. Especially Disintegrator. Uber Elder is magnitudes harder than Shaper. And it's a pretty clunky item with a downside. And this is just straight up strange. Like this has literally been dead for 4 years. Nobody's been using this for 4 years. I vendor it for Alch Shards. So even if that was slightly too strong this league for whatever reason, with just like was just too much damage, like that's just strange to me in my opinion. But I think Starforge makes sense, but these two don't. And like Starforge is so strong too. Just the fact that it has life on it is like very, very special. It kind of like helps counter two-handed defense. The Circle of Fear, Nostalgia, Regret, Anguish, and Guilt rings that affected heralds now give lower values of reservation cost reduction and lower values of buff effect. These rings provided too much power and were too obvious a choice for so many builds. Yeah, but they also like, they have no defense on them. You have to give up your entire ring slot for just damage. That is a very fair trade-off, and they're really hard to get a good one. They're rare, it's hard to find the encounter. The encounter is insane, like Twisted Syntheti. Hexproof now gives immunity to curses on top of preventing any curse from being applied. This means that if you gain Hexproof, you'll immediately remove any curses on you. This was an oversight that this wasn't already the case, and will mean that stealing Hexproof from enemies will now clear all curses off you. that? How long did that take? Okay, so for those of you who don't know what this means, is that the current way the Headhunter works is that you steal a buff that lasts for 20 seconds. But then you self-curse. You curse yourself. And you make it last... Sorry, what's the current max duration of Headhunter? 90 seconds? 110? I can't remember. Okay, whatever. A long time. Way too long. Now, the problem with this is that now they're going to be lasting for 20 seconds. Don't get me wrong. It's still going to be a disgustingly powerful item. But now it isn't going to be... Hopefully, you'll probably still see huge boots walking around. But it, like, nerfs the power by, like, 3 or 4 times. I love that they're, like, increasing two-handed builds. Now, this isn't, like, something that's super relevant for me and what I'm league starting with. Because it would take a lot for two-handers to be, like, a safe league start choice. Especially, and it's not something that I play a lot. Comfort level with the build is very important when, like, pushing for your day one thing, right? So, for me, it would take a lot for this to be, like, a league starter. But I think it could actually be really cool for the game. Brands... super worried about how they're going to feel and play. 100%, like, not a chance that this is something I would league start with. Not a chance in hell. Like, it might be completely fine, but it's not something I would want to risk. The Warcry stuff, really excited for it. The stun changes were really weird in my opinion. I think that's odd. It's not like people were going around, like, making stun builds a lot, so that was odd. I actually actively avoided playing it. I have a tab with all the gear I need to make a build. I have multiple 6-inch shafts and, like, all the jewels, everything rolled, but I just avoided playing it. The reason for that is that when something is that powerful and that strong for everything, it's very, very easy for at least me personally to be like, well, why don't, like, after I played that build, I go like, well, why don't I just play my Herald build? Like, yeah, I could make this, like, really cool creative build, or I could go shit on everything with my Herald build. So, we'll see. We'll see. But, so I avoided playing it at least. Val Molten Shell, a little bit surprised, but it does make sense. It's a bit OP. I think, I hope it's not, like, too nerfed, because defense in PoE, it's important that that is strong and worth doing. Archmage, probably the easiest skill to balance. So, I'll be surprised if Archmage is completely broken. So, I think Archmage is still fine. Cyclone doesn't really change anything, just a minor change. I think overall, pretty interesting. Very, like, there's a lot of things I'm sad and disappointed about too, though. Like, no Mana Guardian nerfs. But, yeah, pretty cool. Hopefully you guys liked my rendition of reading the notes. Good luck in Harvest. Remember that I made loads of, like, longer tutorials. Thanks for watching. For those of you watching on YouTube, try to die less than I do. Like, subscribe, etc., etc.